This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, as we this week we have the second parak of Avos. I'm going to share with you one Mishnah which really talks about what we should make important and not important in our life, and it's the seventh Mishnah in the second parak from the great Hillel, who just knew the Torah way and shared with us the Torah way of life. So Hu HaYomer, he used to say, Mar b'basar, mar b'rima. If you have a lot of meat, hanger steaks, and under broil, French roast, alle gute Sachen, lamb chops, mar b'rima, the end of the result will be that you'll have maggots after 120. Now, not only does that sound unappetizing, but the Gemara tells us that Rima, maggots, are koshin la'adam, koshin la'meis, kemachat b'basar achai. The maggots that attack the body are as painful to the soul as needles in live flesh. So it's not like, oh, well, I don't care, I'll enjoy the hanger steak now. In the grave, I'm not feeling anything anyway. Right? So there is a Taisus Yom Tov talks about that. What does it mean? The body doesn't feel anything in the grave. So the Taisus Yom Tov says it means that the soul will feel tremendous pain from the fact that the body prioritized wrong. That's what the Taisus Yom Tov says. But over here, the Rav waxes philosophical. And the Rav says that the Kamash Molan Haitana, the lesson of this Tana is Shekol Ribuyin Koshin La'adam. All excess, all too much is no good for man, except Chutz Meribuy Torah v'Chachma U'Tzedakah, except for Torah and wisdom and charity, which the Mishnah is going to go on to say in its contrasting statement. If you remember, I told you that there's a very unusual medrash in the beginning of the Chumash, in the beginning of Bereshis. It says, Vayara likim es kol asher asa, Hashem saw everything he did, v'hinei toiv ma'od, and it was very good. So the Medrash says, toiv zu yetzer hara, toiv is the good inclination, ma'od zu yetzer, toiv zu yetzer toiv, toiv is the good inclination, that's good, ma'od zu yetzer hara, that's the evil inclination. So what does that mean? The evil inclination is very good? What does that mean? So Rav Twersky says, the beautiful pshat, that anything ma'od, anything that's too, T-O-O, is no good. That's a sign of the Yetzer Hara. And that's what he's saying over here. That anything in excess, any ribuy, is a sign of the Yetzer Hara. Ma'ar b'basar, ma'ar b'rima. Now, the Mishnah is also saying something very important. There are many people that they might not even notice it. They live to eat. They live to eat. They live from the latte in the morning to the strawberry and whipped creams in the afternoon, to the steak and potatoes in the night, to a cinnamon bun and some bromfin before they go to sleep. They even get up in the middle of the night for a snack, right? They live to eat. Now, to live to eat is living for maggots in the grave. That's what the Mishnah wants to put in perspective. Don't live to eat. We can enjoy eating, but don't live to eat. People say, Thursday night I have my cholent, I have my overnight kugel, and Friday afternoon I have my to'ameh, and don't live to eat. If you live to eat, so what do you have? You have rima. At the end of the day, you have maggots. Don't live to eat. The Mishnah is putting things in perspective. The next statement is even more serious. Mar b'nechosim, mar b'daiga. One has a lot of properties. What does he have? So a person says, what do you mean, what do I have? I have a lot of properties. I'm a successful man. What do you mean, if I have investment properties I saw ahead of time, and I bought up property in Lakewood, in Toms River, and I have some property in Manhattan, and I have some property in Eretz Yisrael? What do you mean? I'm a very successful, very prosperous man. Says the Mishnah, Mar b'nechosim, if you have a lot of property, mar b'daiga, you have a lot of worries. So first of all, the Mishnah is warning us again. This is not what you should aspire to in life. To franchise all over the country or all over the world. I have a global item. I have a global market. I have franchises in London and in Belgium and in China and in... Says, you know what you have? You have a lot of headaches. The Rav brings down, it's interesting. The Rav says, "V'chosid echad oyem mispal." It's interesting. The Rav doesn't cite who the chosid was. We know who this chosid is. The Rav was referring to the Avos Avos, because the Avos Avos coined this tefillah. The chosid echad oyem mispal. There was a chosid that davened, "Hamokom yatzileni mipizur hanefesh." Hashem should save me from the fragmentation of my soul. Pizur hanefesh. What's pshat fragmentation of my soul? So the Rav explains. V'shol mimenu, they asked of this chassid, Mao pizur hanefesh. Amar lahem, he said, Shiuloi nechasim merubim mefuzarim b'mekayim harba. I shouldn't have property in many different places, but tzarich lefazer nafshay lachshav lekan lekan. And I'll be fragmented. And I know people like this. So what are you doing up so late in the night? What do you mean? I have a business. It's a different time zone. They're calling me all the time, morning, noon, and night. There are problems in all different areas. That's pizur hanefesh. That's not success. And the first thing we have to know is that this is one of the biggest yetzer haras, because mi sheyesh leimana writes him a sign. Somebody has 100, wants 200. Now 100, 200, that's silly putty. Somebody has 1 million, wants 2 million. And somebody has 10 million, wants 20 million. And somebody has 200 million, wants 400 million. It's insatiable. People think they're going to stop. They're not going to stop. It doesn't. This is my way of life already. But what it does, I know somebody. He made a cheshbon. After Hurricane Sandy, there was cheap property. So he bought cheap property, and he rented it out to low-income people. And he thought it made a lot of sense. And then every morning, noon, and night, he was getting phone calls. Getting phone calls, the toilet is stopped up. Somebody tripped in front of one of his properties. Then one of the tenants is in jail, and the wife can't pay anything. All of a sudden, he got headaches. What happened? It's a Ferish Mishnah. Ma b'nechosim, ma b'daiga. It's a Ferish Mishnah. Now, the Mishnah is warning us. What looks like prosperity is not prosperity. The person, and yeah, it's amazing how the Keli Yungelite that have no money are learning up mamish day and night. They have nothing. And a very wealthy guy that has 100 times, 1,000 times, hardly has time to learn. That's ma b'nechosim, ma b'daiga. What? Now that's a very interesting statement, what Aryeh brings up. Ein ben chayrim elamisha oisik b'Torah. Most people rebel. It's counterintuitive, that statement. Because ben chayrim means free. And Torah is 613 restrictions. So Rav Irving Bunim gives a beautiful mashal to understand this. Rav Irving Bunim says, he says that you could have a violin. If the strings are not tied, then they're not going to make any music. It only makes music if you tie them tight. We only have the music of life if we're tied tight to the Torah. That's the true freedom of a ben Torah. So here Rabbeinu Yonah says an interesting thing. Before the Cherem to Rabbeinu Gershom, if a person was successful, he was able to support many women, he took many wives. How many women? See, especially he's getting older, he takes a bunch of young wives. Right? He feels young. Right? He could afford it. Takes a bunch of wives. The women, says the Rabbeinu Yonah, would vie for his attention and use witchcraft. When it says mechashefa lo yisachaya, why was it? Women resorted to witchcraft to win their husband's attention. Husband has a bunch of wives. Each wife wants to be the center of attention. She wants her husband to visit her. And you think about it. David HaMelech had 16 wives. That's the limit for a king. David HaMelech had 16 wives. That's why later on, at the end of his life, when he had the Seichenes, Avishag, it says he didn't marry her. So he never slept with her. She warned him, but he never slept with her. He didn't sleep with her because she was number 17. He wouldn't divorce one of his wives. It wasn't right. So he did 16 wives. 16 wives, how often could you see 16 wives? If you saw her at Shavuos, you could say, I'll see you again, on Sukkot. It's hard to have 16 wives. Right? So what they did was the women resorted to kshafim. Kshafim is a death sentence. It's a capital offense. Again, 2 TOO is no good. Ma b'shvachos. Person gets older, has many maidservants, he has a lot of property, he gets many maidservants. It's not good to have many maidservants. Ma b'shvachos, ma b'zima. If the promiscuity doesn't hit him, it'll hit his family. If not his family, his neighbors. The person has to be careful, not just shvachos. The person has to be very careful with secretaries. Secretary can be a very big danger. See, a secretary does whatever you want. Wife doesn't do that. Right? Wife isn't paid. Secretary is paid. She's paid to come in every day looking pretty. She's paid to listen and say in a sweet voice, what else, boss? That's a very dangerous thing. A very dangerous thing. Somebody told me that a boss, she was feeling a little feelings for him. So she went to an Adam Gadol and she asked, what should she do? So he said, I want to meet you. So she said, I'm a little embarrassed. He said, no, I want to meet you. And she told him, I felt something and I ran out. But now I want to know what kind of gedorim I should set up that it shouldn't happen again. And he praised her that she ran out, but he said you can't go back to the work anymore. Can't go back. It's a dangerous thing. Mar ba'avodim, mar begezel. You have a lot of servants. Servants are people of loose morals, and that causes a lot of thievery. You don't want to have that around you. Now comes the flip side. The stuff that we're not drawn to naturally. So interesting. Challenges of life. Money we're drawn to. Right? Food we're drawn to. Women we're drawn to. Mar b'Torah. If you're mar b'Torah, mar b'chayim. You'll live long. It's interesting. We're not drawn to Torah. We have to push ourselves to learn Torah. We only had 9 people by the daf today. We didn't even have a minyan. If there would be a concert, if there would be sushi, if there would be a sushi bar, or even a latte bar, you kidding, the room would be full. But Marba Boss is Marba Rima. Marba Torah, that's Marba Chai. You have a lot of Torah, there's life. There's a beautiful medrash. The medrash says that somebody fell overboard. And it was a choppy sea. They couldn't rescue him. So the captain threw a rope. And he said, whatever you do, hold on to this rope for your dear life. If you leave it go for a second, you're lost. We'll never be able to find you in these waves. He held on to that rope until the sea calmed down. He held on to it with dear life. The Medrash says that rope is Torah. That's how we should hold on. Torah is our life. In the choppy seas of life, we have to hold on to the Torah. Marba Torah, Marba Chai. But it's not, as I said, that's not normal. Normal is okay, let me just get over with my learning and then I'll be able to relax tonight. Marba Torah, Marba Chai. Marba Yeshiva. Now here there's 2 girsayos over here. One girsa is Marba Yeshiva, Marba Chachma. There's no, we've spoken about this in the past, there's no quick way to become a Talmid Chacham. You know, nowadays you could go for an accelerated BA. An accelerated BA and a master's program. You had an accelerated BA master's program in 2 years. Right? There's no accelerated way to become a Talmid Chacham. You want to become a Talmid Chacham, Marba Yeshiva, like Rabbi Wein says, you got to have a shiny seat of pants. You got to sit a lot. You got to learn a lot. There's no quick scheme to become a Talmid Chacham. Now there's another girsa here, which has a tremendous moral, tremendous lesson. And that's Marba Chochma, Marba Yeshiva. The more wisdom we get, the more we want to sit. Tein l'chocham v'yechkam oid. When a person starts tasting Torah, then he wants to be by the Gemara. You look at the big Masmidim, they got a taste for Torah. Oh, wow! Give me more and more and more and more. That's Marba Chochma, Marba Yeshiva. If they have the wisdom, if they taste the wisdom, then they want the Yeshiva more. Marba Eitza, Marba Svuna. A person that asks for advice will gain understanding. Remember, Svuna is Maven Davar Mitoich Davar. You ask people that are big Talmidei Chacham, they could show you from the Torah advice for all of life's situations. That's Svuna. That's Maven Davar. It's good to ask advice. Some people are too proud to ask advice. You ask advice, and then one day you'll give advice. But you ask advice, you get a new understanding of life. People who know how to ask advice. You know, Zakein, Zekanachach, there's advice and experience. Marbet Staka, Marbet Shalom. Now, the simple meaning of Marbet Staka, Marbet Shalom is that when you give charity and you ease people's financial burdens, there are people, Rabbi said, there are people that can't sleep. They don't know how they're going to pay tuition for the end of the year. And people are already being told, you want an admission card, you want registration for next year, you got to pay up this year. They don't know how to do it. There are people that didn't buy sneakers for their children for the summer. They can't afford it. And there's tension in the house. Marbet tzedakah, marbet shalom. You give tzedakah, you create peace in people's homes. But there's another meaning over here, which Rabbi Wein says in his Pirkay Avos, which I love. Ma'abit stuck, if somebody has a charitable way of looking at people, Ma'abit stuck a ma'abishana. You know, there are some people that look at everything with a critical eye or a cynical eye. And then there are people that look at things with a generosity of spirit. If you could look at other people not so critically, people that are not like you, but if you could look at them with more generosity. Ma'abit tzedakah means not just money. It means a charitable spirit. Charitable spirit. Somebody comes into shul, and he's wearing sandals without socks. You look at him, that's the way you come into shul? What does he think this is, a beach? Or if you have a more generous spirit, you say, oh, you know, where he grew up, that's the way they dressed. Where he grew up, that's the way they dressed. You know, I remember Mem Libi Aleh Shalom, Zichranu Livracha, when they came down to the Tillim group, a woman that had completely uncovered hair. And some people, you know, they weren't comfortable. And Mem Libi said to them, you know, her mother dressed that way. And her grandmother dressed that way. I knew her mother, I knew her grandmother. What do you expect from her? Why are you getting so uncomfortable? You know, that's a generosity of spirit. That's ma'abit tzedakah, ma'abit shalom. Kana shem tov, if you acquire a good name, kana la'atzmai. So it's interesting that the Rishonim say an interesting thing. A name is a person's essence. We say Shma Garim, a name foretells a person's destiny. Right? Hevel was called Hevel, he died in vain. Hevel. Noach was the one that found Cain. Right? Daniel is La'adonai, the quintessential Eved Hashem. When you get a good name, that means you captured your essence. And that, to counter the daga and the rima, when you get a good name, it's yours. Again, I think about Mem Libi. She left this world. Mem Libi was never interested in money, ever. She had no Baruch Hashem. I took care of her financially. She never had an agenda of anything that she did ever in her life. She never did anything for money. She acquired a good name for herself. Because there was no ulterior motive. There was no zich. And of course, that's the greatest crown. What do you think she had 1,600 people at the Levaya for? That's the quintessential shame type. And that is La'atzmai. It's not left over to anybody. That's La'atzmai. And finally, Kanolai Divrei Torah. When you acquire Torah, Kanolai Chai Elam Haba. The biggest investment, people say, I like long-term investments. Some people invest in life insurance. Some people invest in money market funds. Some people invest in gold. Right? People like long-term investments. The long-term investment is Torah. Ashrei Misha Balakan v'Talmuda biyadai. Torah is nitzchias. You want to have an investment? You want to know, I want to do something today that really makes a difference. You learn Torah, you've invested, you salted it away for billions of years. Billions is nothing. Nitzchias, for eternity. That's the value of learning Torah. This Mishnah puts life and what our pursuits and priorities should be in a very big perspective. I want to remind everybody, tomorrow night, Mincha at 7:45. It's up to you, Rabbi Isai. We have to start the daf, so we need everybody to help out at 7:45. We now have a new bar mitzvah boy who's going to be helping out. And Please come. Rav Chanani ben Akasha, Amaratza Kadosh Baruch.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.